Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The invitation arrived on cream-colored cardstock, its edges trimmed in gold. Coulter Reese turned it over in his hands, studying the expensive paper with the practiced eye of someone who understood systems and structures. The restaurant name Maison de Seal was embossed in flowing script. 7 o'clock. His birthday. Tonight. Odd, he muttered, setting it on the granite countertop of his kitchen. Coulter checked his watch, a practical timepiece with a leather band worn smooth by years of wear. Not flashy, but reliable. Like him, it was already 5:30. He pulled out his phone and called Verena. After 4 rings, her voice came through, hurried and distracted. "Coulter, I'm in the middle of something. I got an invitation from your mother. For my birthday dinner." He kept his voice even, controlled. "At Maison de Seal." A pause. "Oh, that. Yes, Mom wanted to do something special this year. You didn't mention it. It slipped my mind. I have that work dinner first, remember? The Hastings account? But I'll join you both for dessert." Her voice softened slightly. "It'll be nice, Coulter. Mom's making an effort." Coulter's jaw tightened. 7 years of marriage, and Loretta Langdon had never made an effort that didn't somehow wound him. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "Don't be difficult. It's just dinner." The background noise on her end grew louder. "I'm about to go. We're the Navy Armani. Mom likes it." The call disconnected. Coulter stared at the phone for a moment, then tucked it away. Something felt wrong. Loretta despised him, had from the moment Verena brought him home. A systems architect with no family connections wasn't what she had envisioned for her daughter. Upstairs, Coulter stood before the mirror, adjusting his tie. The Navy Armani suit fit perfectly, but the man inside it looked tired. Faint lines around his eyes that weren't there a year ago. He ran a hand through his short brown hair, noting the first threads of gray at the temples. His phone buzzed. A text from Kenny. "Happy birthday, brother. Still on for beers tomorrow?" Coulter smiled, his first genuine smile of the day. Kenny Blaine had been his friend since they were 10, had served with him in the Army. When everything else in life shifted, Kenny remained constant. "Thanks. Yes to beers. Might need them after dinner with the Dragon Lady tonight." Kenny's response came quickly. "Run while you can, man. I'll create a diversion." Coulter chuckled, then caught himself when he noticed the sudden hollow feeling in his chest. Why did casual jokes about escaping his life hit so hard lately? He grabbed his keys and wallet, gave himself one last look in the mirror, and headed out to face whatever Loretta had planned. The evening air was crisp as he walked his car. Seattle in autumn, wet leaves plastering the sidewalks, the scent of rain and coffee hanging in the air. Coulter breathed deeply, trying to settle the unease growing in his stomach. Maison de Seal occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, its windows offering sweeping views of Elliott Bay. The maitre d' greeted Coulter with practiced deference. "Mr. Reese? Madame Langdon has arranged a private dining room for your party. This way, please." Coulter followed him through the main dining area, where conversations hummed beneath crystal chandeliers and waiters moved with silent efficiency. The private room was tucked away in a corner, its door heavy and wooden. "Your party hasn't arrived yet," the maitre d' said, opening the door. "Would you like to wait at the bar?" "No," Coulter replied. "I'll wait here." The room was small but elegant, with a single table set for 3. A bottle of champagne chilled in an ice bucket. Candles flickered in silver holders, casting warm light across the white tablecloth. As the door closed behind him, Coulter approached the table. A manila envelope sat at what was clearly meant to be his place, his name written on it in Loretta's precise handwriting. He picked it up, his trained fingers immediately noting its weight. Legal documents. Coulter's heart quickened as he slid the papers out. On top was a handwritten note on Loretta's personal stationery. "Happy birthday. Infertile trash should just leave. Loretta and Verena." Below it lay divorce papers. Already filled out. Already signed by Verena. Coulter's breath caught. The room seemed to tilt, the candle's flames blurring as his eyes struggled to focus. His fingers went numb, and the papers slipped to the table. He stood perfectly still, his military training kicking in. Compartmentalize. Breathe. Assess. The pieces clicked into place: Verina's late nights, her sudden work dinners, her growing coldness since his infertility diagnosis 6 months ago, the way she'd stopped touching him, the furtive phone conversations that ended when he entered a room. The door opened, and a young waitress appeared, startling when she saw him standing there alone. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I thought." She glanced around the empty room. "Should I come back when your party arrives?" Coulter looked at her, then down at the table setting. With deliberate movements, he folded the divorce papers and slid them into his inner jacket pocket. He pulled out the chair and sat down. "My party won't be joining me," he said, his voice steady. "But I'll be dining." The waitress hesitated. "Just you, sir?" "Just me." Coulter unfolded his napkin and placed it in his lap. "I'd like the full tasting menu, please. With the wine pairings. The full." She stopped herself. "Of course, sir. Right away." As she hurried away, Coulter sat motionless, staring at the empty chairs across from him. Each heartbeat felt like a hammer striking an anvil, forging something new and unbreakable inside him. The meal arrived in careful sequences. 7 courses of artfully arranged food that Coulter barely tasted. He ate methodically, washing each bite down with sips of expertly paired wine. The waitstaff moved around him with uncomfortable smiles, sensing something wrong but too professional to ask. With each course, the fire inside him grew hotter, more focused. They had planned this, Verina and her mother. A birthday dinner that was actually an ambush. A public humiliation. Leave the infertile trash to find out he wasn't man enough. That he wasn't worthy to be. By the time the dessert arrived, a delicate chocolate creation with gold leaf, Coulter's rage had condensed into something cold and dense. No longer a wildfire, but a directed beam. He paid the bill with his own credit card, adding a generous tip. The waitress thanked him, her eyes still curious and concerned. "Was everything to your satisfaction, sir?" Coulter looked up at her, his face composed. "The meal was excellent. Perfect, in fact." She nodded, clearly sensing the contradiction between his words and the tension radiating from him. "Happy birthday, Mr. Reese." "Thank you." He stood, straightening his jacket. "It's one I won't forget." The drive home was a blur of street lights and memories. He remembered sitting in the doctor's office 6 months ago, Verina's hand cold in his, as the specialist explained the test results. Male factor infertility. Treatable in some cases, but in his, the damage from a training accident years ago, the chances were nearly zero. "I'm sorry," the doctor had said. "There are other options we can discuss. Donor sperm, adoption. We need time to process this." Verina had interrupted, her voice tight. Later that night, she'd held him, whispered that it didn't matter, that they would figure it out, that she loved him, not some hypothetical child. Coulter gripped the steering wheel tighter. Lies. All of it. His mind shifted to Loretta, to the dinner party 2 months after the diagnosis. He'd overheard her in the kitchen, speaking to Verina. "Darling, you can't possibly stay with him now. What's the point? The Carruthers boy has always been sweet on you, and his family is actually somebody. Think about it, no children? That's not a marriage, it's a dead end." He remembered the pause before Verina responded, too quiet for him to hear. He'd walked away, not wanting to know her answer, telling himself she'd defended him, needing to believe that. A week later, the strange text had appeared on her phone while she was in the shower. Coulter had seen a flash on the screen, a message from someone listed only as W. "Miss you already. Last night was perfect." He confronted her. She'd laughed it off. A work colleague. The message was about a presentation they'd nailed. He'd chosen to believe her because the alternative was too painful. Coulter pulled into their driveway, killing the engine. He sat in the dark car, staring at the house they'd bought together 3 years ago. The porch light was on, but no other lights shone from inside. Verina wasn't home, of course. Work dinner. He pulled out his phone and texted Kenny. Time to break them. The response came immediately. "What happened?" Not over text. "Meet me tomorrow. Early. Roger that. My place, 7 a.m. Coulter pocketed his phone and finally got out of the car. He unlocked the front door and stepped inside the dark house. It smelled faintly of Verina's perfume, expensive, like everything else she chose. He walked through the rooms, seeing them with new eyes. how little of himself existed in this space. How carefully Verena had curated their home to please her mother, to project the right image in their bedroom. He opened Verena's closet. Designer dresses and shoes. Handbags worth more than most people's monthly salary. He touched nothing, simply observed. Then he moved to the bathroom, opening drawers and cabinets. In the back of her vanity, behind bottles of face cream, he found a small pill container. Birth control pills. They'd stopped using contraception over a year ago when they decided to try for a child. Before his diagnosis, she'd been taking them secretly, even when they were trying. Even before she knew he couldn't give her children, Coulter closed the drawer softly. In his office, he booted up his computer and logged into their joint bank accounts. Regular withdrawals to an account he didn't recognize. Large sums going back months. The pieces kept falling into place, forming a picture so ugly he could barely look at it. But he forced himself to see it all, to understand exactly what he was dealing with. By the time he finished, it was past midnight. Verena still hadn't come home. Coulter returned to their bedroom and packed a small bag, just enough clothes for a few days, his laptop, and important documents. Before leaving, he took one last look around the house. 7 years of his life. 7 years of what he now knew was an elaborate lie. Coulter walked out, locking the door behind him. He got in his car and drove to a hotel downtown. Tomorrow, the war would begin. Kenny's apartment smelled of coffee and gun oil. The small living room reflected its owner. Practical, no nonsense, with hints of military precision. A well-worn couch faced a TV mounted above a fireplace. On the coffee table lay several gun magazines and a half-assembled fishing reel. Coulter sat with his hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee, his voice steady as he recounted the previous night's events. He'd slept little at the hotel, his mind racing with plans and possibilities. Kenny paced as he listened, his expression darkening. At 6'2", with broad shoulders and calloused hands, he looked like what he was, a man who fixed broken things for a living. Those rich witches, Kenny spat when Coulter finished. I always knew Verena was cold, but this? He shook his head. What do you need from me? Information, Coulter replied. And maybe muscle, depending on how this plays out. A knock at the door interrupted them. Kenny checked his watch. That'll be Lana. I called her when you texted last night. He opened the door to reveal a petite woman with dark hair tied back in a tight ponytail. Lana Espinosa nodded at Coulter as she entered, her sharp eyes taking in his rumpled appearance. You look like hell, she said, placing her laptop bag on the table. Nice to see you too, Lana, Coulter replied. Lana had worked with Coulter at his previous firm. As a financial analyst, she had a gift for finding patterns in chaos and a notorious talent for office gossip. I brought coffee and information. She pulled out her laptop and a paper bag from which wafted the scent of pastries. Can you fill me in? I've been busy since 5 a.m. What did you find? Coulter asked, leaning forward. Lana opened her laptop. Well, for starters, your mother-in-law's been planning this for a while. She's been meeting with divorce attorneys for months, very discreetly, but not discreetly enough to hide from someone who knows where to look. She turned the screen to show Coulter a series of calendar entries and credit card statements. And then there's the matter of Wells Carruthers. Carruthers. The name struck a chord. The banking family? The very same. Wells is the younger son. Harvard Business School, trust fund, sits on a few charity boards. Lana pulled up a photo of a handsome man in his early 30s, blonde and polished. And he's been spending a lot of time with your wife. She scrolled through several photos, social media posts showing Verena and Wells at charity events, gallery openings, restaurant dinners. In most, they maintained a respectable distance, but their body language told a different story. When were these taken? Coulter asked, his voice tight. Over the past 4 months. They've been careful, always in public, always with plausible deniability. But about 6 weeks ago, they got sloppy. She pulled up a security camera still from what looked like a hotel corridor. Wells and Verena, wrapped in each other's arms, his face buried in her neck. How did you get this? Kenny asked, impressed. Lana smirked. I know people who know people. The point is, they've been meeting at the Grayson Hotel every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. Your wife claims spa appointments or late meetings. Wells tells his secretary he's at the club. Coulter's face remained impassive, but his eyes hardened. This is good, Lana. What else? Your mother-in-law's foundation may not be as charitable as she claims. I found some financial irregularities that suggest tax evasion. I'll need more time to confirm, but looks promising. Her sister Nadine might help with that, Coulter said. They haven't spoken in years, some falling out over their father's will. She lives outside Portland now. Lana nodded, making a note. I'll find her. Kenny had been quiet, looking at the photos of Wells and Verena. You know what you need to do first, right? Confirm they're still at it. Catch them red-handed. Coulter nodded. Today's Thursday. Then let's go hunting, Kenny said. Grabbing his jacket point 3 hours later, they sat in Kenny's truck half a block from Coulter's house. Wells' silver Mercedes was parked in the driveway. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. Kenny muttered to Coulter's face was stone. Why would they? The divorce papers are signed. They think I'm out of the picture already. Kenny gripped the steering wheel. We should go in there right now. Let me talk to this trust fund kid. No. Coulter's voice was firm. That's what they'd expect. Verena would love a scene me barging in, losing control. It would fit their narrative of the unstable, inadequate husband. He pulled out a small package from his pocket. I have something better in mind. Inside the package was a tiny wireless camera, no bigger than a button. I need to place this where it'll capture them, Coulter explained. I'll wait until they leave. Kenny eyed him. You're taking this awfully well. No, I'm not, Coulter said quietly. I'm just channeling it differently than they'd expect. They waited another hour before Wells and Verena emerged from the house. She wore a fitted dress and high heels, her hand casually linked through his arm. They got into his car and drove away, laughing about something. Coulter watched them go, his face expressionless. Give me 20 minutes. He walked to his house, unlocking the door with steady hands. Inside, evidence of their presence lingered 2 wine glasses on the coffee table, Verena's scarf tossed over a chair. The bedroom door stood half open, the sheets tangled. Working quickly, Coulter placed the tiny camera on a bookshelf with a clear view of the living room. He synced it to his phone, checking the angle and feed. Perfect. Before leaving, he noticed Verena's laptop on the dining table. Open. Logged in. A gift. Coulter sat down and began to scroll through her emails, taking screenshots of anything useful. There were dozens of exchanges with Loretta about him mocking his infertility, complaining about his modest ambitions, planning the divorce ambush, and emails to Wells' intimate, explicit. Going back months, he sent copies of everything to himself, then carefully returned the laptop exactly as he'd found it. Outside, Kenny was waiting in the truck, engine running. Did you get what you needed? He asked as Coulter climbed in. More than they know, Coulter replied, holding up his phone to show the live camera feed from his living room. Now we wait. 3 days later, Coulter sat in his hotel room, surrounded by printouts and his laptop. He'd taken time off work, citing a family emergency. Not entirely a lie. The camera had captured everything. Wells and Verena returning to the house later that night. Their conversation about the divorce. Their laughter as Verena recounted what she imagined had been Coulter's face when he opened the envelope. Wells promising that once things settled, Loretta would introduce him properly at the club. Coulter had watched it all, recording everything, his rage crystallizing into something cold and purposeful. His phone buzzed Lana. I found Nadine Carr, she said without preamble. And she hates her sister. She's sitting on a gold mine of dirt, including tax documents that prove Loretta's been skimming from her charity for years. Will she share them? Coulter asked. Already has. I'm sending them to you now. Also, I have a contact Madison Blake. She runs that gossip account Seattle Exposed. Half the city follows her. Very discreet about her sources. Coulter thought for a moment. Set up a meeting. And tell Kenny I need him tonight. That evening, Coulter met Madison Blake at a quiet bar on the outskirts of the city. She was younger than he expected, barely 30, with shrewd eyes and a quick smile. Lana says you have something juicy, she said after they'd ordered drinks. Coulter slid a USB drive across the table. Footage of Wells Carruthers and Verena Reese. She's still legally married. To me. Madison's eyebrows shot up. The Langdon girl? Loretta's daughter? The same. Madison picked up the drive. Why come to me? Why not just use it in the divorce? Because public humiliation is what they planned for me, Coulter replied evenly. And I believe in returning gifts. Fair enough. She pocketed the drive. Anything else I should know? Just that there's more where that came from. Much more. I'll be in touch. The first post hit the next morning, grainy but unmistakable footage of Wells and Verena entering Coulter's house, followed by them on the couch, her straddling him, his hands tangled in her hair. Madison's caption was perfect. Who's the mystery man with socialite Verena Reese, and does her husband know? By afternoon, the post had thousands of comments. Verena's phone rang nonstop. She texted Coulter furiously, demanding he call off whatever he'd done. He didn't respond. The next day, Madison posted screenshots of emails between Verena and Wells, carefully edited to hide their source, but explicit enough to remove any doubt about the nature of their relationship. Verena's Instagram comments filled with snake emojis and worse. Her PR firm clients started distancing themselves. Wells stopped answering her calls. Coulter monitored it all from a distance, methodically planning his next moves. With Lana's help, he created anonymous accounts to leak more information emails between Verena and Loretta mocking his infertility, plans for the birthday dinner ambush, discussions of how they divide his assets. Online, Verena's reputation imploded. The woman who'd built her career on image management could not control her own. Every defense she tried backfired as more evidence emerged. Then came the tax documents from Nadine. Coulter sent them anonymously to 3 financial journalists who'd previously written puff pieces about Loretta's charitable work. Within hours, questions were being raised about the foundation's finances. The IRS took notice. A week into his campaign, Coulter met Kenny at a diner for breakfast. Dark circles underlined his eyes, but he moved with determined energy. "You look terrible," Kenny observed. "Are you sleeping at all?" "Enough," Coulter replied, sipping his coffee. "It's working. Verena's lost 2 clients already. Wells is panicking. His father called him home for a family discussion, and Loretta's lawyer contacted her accountant yesterday." Kenny studied his friend. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" Coulter nodded. "I'm not done. Not even close." "What's next?" "The Bennett Foundation Gala. Saturday night. Biggest charity event of the season. Loretta and Verena will both be there." Coulter's smile didn't reach his eyes. "So will we." Kenny raised an eyebrow. "We don't exactly run in those circles, brother." "You don't need to. I have 2 tickets and backstage access, courtesy of an old client who owes me a favor. I just need you to handle the tech." As they left the diner, Coulter's phone buzzed. Madison, requesting another meeting. That afternoon, they sat in the same bar. "You've stirred up a hornet's nest," she said, looking both impressed and wary. "Loretta Langdon called me personally. Threatened to sue. Let her try. Everything you've posted is true and verifiable." Madison leaned forward. "What's your endgame here, Coulter? What do you want?" He met her gaze steadily. "Justice. They try to break me. I'm returning the favor." "Well, you're succeeding. Verena's been uninvited from 3 events this week, and rumor has it Wells' father is shipping him off to their London office." Coulter nodded, unsurprised. "I have more. For after the gala." Madison studied him. "You know, most men in your position would just take the money and move on. I'm not most men." He stood to leave. And this was never about money. The Bennett Foundation Gala occupied the grand ballroom of Seattle's oldest hotel. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen. The city's elite mingled in evening wear, sipping champagne and performatively writing checks for charity. Coulter and Kenny arrived early, moving through the backstage area with the confidence of people who belonged there. Kenny carried a backpack of equipment, which he set up with efficient movements while Coulter kept watch. "All set," Kenny said after 15 minutes. "Feeds going directly to the main screen. Timer set for 9:30, right after the main speech." Coulter checked his watch. "Perfect. Now we wait." They separated, Kenny heading to a vantage point near the exit, Coulter moving into the main ballroom. He wore a tuxedo borrowed from a colleague, nothing custom-made like those around him, but good enough to blend in. He stayed in the shadows, watching at 8 o'clock. Loretta made her entrance, resplendent in an emerald gown, diamonds at her throat. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, accepting compliments and air kisses. If she felt any pressure from the financial scrutiny now facing her foundation, she showed no sign of it. 20 minutes later, Verena arrived. She wore a red dress, her makeup flawless, chin held high. But Coulter, who knew her better than anyone, saw the strain around her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands as she accepted a glass of champagne. The whispers started immediately. Heads turned. Phones came out discreetly. Seattle's elite might smile to her face, but they'd all seen the videos, read the posts. Scandal was to be avoided unless it came with entertainment value. Coulter moved closer, positioning himself where he could hear without being seen. "Can you believe she showed up?" A woman in blue muttered behind her hand. "Wells' father threatened to cut him off completely," her companion replied. "That's why he's not here tonight." Verena pretended not to notice, but her smile grew more brittle with each passing minute. She approached her mother, who embraced her briefly before continuing her circuit of the room. That T915, the foundation director, took the stage to introduce Loretta. As the crowd applauded politely, Coulter texted Kenny. Now. Kenny's reply came immediately. On it. Loretta stepped to the microphone, resplendent and composed. "Thank you all for coming tonight. Your generosity sustains our work." As she spoke, Coulter noticed several people checking their phones, eyes widening. The whispers grew louder. Someone gasped. Verena, standing near the front, pulled out her own phone. The color drained from her face that on every social media platform. Madison was posting in real time. Screenshots of Loretta's tax fraud documents. Emails between Loretta and Verena planning the divorce dinner. The most explicit exchanges between Verena and Wells. And a leaked photo of tomorrow's tabloid cover. Wife from hell, betrayal, infertility bullying, and the dinner from hell. Loretta continued speaking, unaware of the digital storm erupting around her. But the audience's attention had fractured. More phones appeared. More whispers. A waiter approached Verena, handed her a tabloid advance copy. She opened it, saw her own face staring back from the cover, and swayed on her feet. Exactly 9:30, the massive screen behind Loretta flickered. Her PowerPoint presentation disappeared, replaced by high-definition video of Verena and Wells in Coulter's bed. The sound was muted, but it didn't matter. The image was unmistakable. Loretta trailed off mid-sentence, turning to see what had captured the audience's attention. Her gasp was audible through the microphone. Chaos erupted. People stood, phones raised to capture both the screen and the reactions. The foundation director rushed to the podium, frantically signaling to the tech booth. But the video continued for a full 30 seconds before abruptly cutting to black. In the stunned silence that followed, Verena's sob echoed through the ballroom. She stumbled toward her mother, reaching for support. Loretta slapped her. The crack of palm against cheeks silenced the room. "You stupid, careless girl," Loretta hissed, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Do you realize what you've done? What this will cost us?" Verena recoiled, holding her cheek. "Me? You're blaming me? This was your idea from the start. Don't you dare." Loretta began, but stopped when she realized every eye in the room was on them, every phone recording. Coulter watched from the shadows as mother and daughter tore into each other, their carefully constructed facade crumbling under public scrutiny. Their voices rose, accusations flew. Years of manipulation and control spilled out for all to witness, but he felt no joy, only a cold satisfaction. He texted Kenny. Time ago, outside, they met at Kenny's truck. "Mission accomplished," Kenny said, looking at his phone, where videos of the gala meltdown were already trending. "Think they know it was you?" "They will," Coulter replied, "but they won't be able to prove it." The call came 2 days later. Wells Carruthers, voice shaking with barely contained rage. "I know it was you, Reese. You've destroyed my reputation, threatened my position in my family." "Interesting," Coulter cut in, his voice calm. "That sounds remarkably like what you tried to do to me." "This isn't over," Wells snarled. "I have connections you can't imagine. By the time I'm done with you, I'll meet you." Coulter interrupted again. "Tonight, the warehouse at Pier 17. 10 o'clock. Come alone, and we'll settle this man to man." A pause. "You're not serious." "Deadly serious." Unless you prefer I release the rest of the footage I have, there's that hotel elevator scene that's particularly memorable. Wells swore. Fine. Pier 17. 10 o'clock. Coulter ended the call and immediately dialed Kenny. He took the bait. The warehouse stood dark against the night sky, the sound of water lapping against the pier the only noise. Coulter arrived early, walking the perimeter, checking sightlines. Inside, concrete floors and metal support beams created a cavernous space dimly lit by security lights. A T955, Kenny texted. In position. Car just pulled up. Wells entered alone, his expensive shoes clicking on the concrete. He wore a cashmere coat over what looked like a bespoke suit, his blonde hair perfectly styled despite the late hour. He stopped in the center of the warehouse, turning slowly. I'm here, Reese. Show yourself. Coulter stepped from the shadows. Thanks for coming, Wells. Wells scoffed. What exactly do you hope to accomplish with this melodrama? If you think I'm going to apologize. I don't want your apology, Coulter said, moving closer. I want you to understand consequences. Consequences? Wells gave a humorless laugh. You have no idea who you're dealing with. My family. Your family sent you to London. Coulter cut in. Your father's disappointed. Your trust funds in jeopardy. And all for what? A married woman whose mother picked you out like a breeding stud? Wells' face darkened. He stepped forward, fists clenched. You pathetic excuse for a man. Can't even give your wife children. Can't satisfy her. Can't. The first blow caught Wells by surprise, a quick, precise strike to the solar plexus that doubled him over. As he gasped for breath, Kenny emerged from behind a stack of crates. What followed wasn't a fight so much as a methodical lesson. Kenny, with his military training, held Wells immobile while Coulter delivered calculated blows hard enough to hurt, controlled enough to avoid permanent damage. They worked with the precision of men who had done this before, in places where rules didn't apply. When they finished, Wells lay on the concrete, blood trickling from his nose, eyes swelling shut. Coulter knelt beside him, voice low. That was for the lies. Next time, it won't be a warning. He stood, nodding to Kenny. They left Wells gasping on the floor, the sound of water still lapping gently against the pier. I in the car. Kenny glanced at Coulter. Think he'll report it and admit he got beaten up after threatening me? No. His pride won't allow it. Coulter flexed his hand, knuckles reddening. Besides, he's leaving for London tomorrow. His father made sure of that. Kenny nodded, satisfied. What's next? Coulter looked out the window at Seattle's glittering skyline. The final push. The weeks that followed brought a cascade of failures for Loretta and Verena. That Loretta's assets were frozen, pending an IRS investigation. The social invitations that had once filled her mailbox dwindled to nothing. Her carefully cultivated image as a philanthropic leader crumbled as financial journalists dug deeper into her foundation's books. Verena lost her remaining clients, then her job at the PR firm. Her apartment building's management declined to renew her lease, citing a morality clause that had never before been enforced. With her accounts linked to her mother's now-frozen assets, she found herself suddenly cash poor for the first time in her life. Coulter watched it all unfold from a distance. Having moved into a new apartment in a different part of the city, he'd returned to work, explaining his absence as a personal matter that his colleagues were too polite to question further. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, his assistant knocked on his office door. Mr. Reese? There's a Verena Reese here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. Coulter looked up from his computer, face impassive. Send her in. Verena entered like a ghost of her former self. Her designer clothes had been replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, hung limp around her face. Without her usual makeup, the dark circles under her eyes stood out starkly. Coulter, she said, her voice small. Thank you for seeing me. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. What do you want, Verena? She sat, hands twisted in her lap. I need help. Mom's accounts are all frozen. My credit cards are maxed out. I can't pay my rent, and the landlord's threatening eviction. And this concerns me how. His voice was even, almost conversational. Please, Coulter. I know you're behind everything that's happened. The leaks, the videos, the tax investigation. Prove it. he said simply. She stared at him, tears welling. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to beg. Her voice broke. I've lost everything. My reputation, my job, my home. Your lover. Coulter supplied, his tone still neutral. A flash of anger crossed her face. Wells is a coward. He left me the minute things got difficult. Just like Mom did. Sounds familiar. Coulter observed. Verina's shoulders slumped. I know I hurt you. I know what we did was cruel. But please, Coulter, we were together for 7 years. Doesn't that count for anything? 7 years of lies. He leaned forward slightly. Tell me, when exactly did you stop loving me? Was it when you found out I couldn't father children? Or was it before that? Was it always a transaction for you? Tears spilled down her cheeks. It wasn't like that. I did love you at the beginning. But then things changed. Mom kept pushing, and Wells was there, and the pressure to have a baby. Stop. Coulter's voice remained quiet, but something in it made Verena flinch. I found your birth control pills, Verena. The ones you were taking even when we were supposedly trying to conceive. Even before my diagnosis. The color drained from her face. I can explain. I'm sure you can. You've always been good at explanations. At stories. At lies. He stood up. But I'm not interested anymore. Verena rose too, desperation etched in every line of her body. Please, she sobbed. I have nowhere to go. No one to turn to. Coulter stepped around his desk until he stood directly in front of her. You destroyed the only thing that loved you, he said softly. Beg harder. It still won't matter. She crumpled then, falling to her knees, hands clutching at his suit jacket. Coulter, please. I'll do anything. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He looked down at her, this woman he had once loved more than life itself, and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pain, just emptiness. Goodbye, Verena. He gently disentangled himself from her grasp and walked to the door, holding it open. Don't come here again. As she stumbled past him, mascara streaking her cheeks, he added, the divorce papers, by the way, I never signed them. My lawyer will be in touch. The final act of Loretta and Verena's downfall played out in public. Just as Coulter had planned, Lana's connections led them to a pawn shop on the outskirts of the city, where Verena had been spotted trying to sell some of her jewelry, the few pieces that were truly hers, and not tied up in the financial investigation. But a social media influencer happened to be live streaming nearby when Loretta arrived in a taxi, still dressed in designer clothes, but visibly frayed around the edges. The argument that ensued between mother and daughter quickly drew attention. You ungrateful little fool, Loretta hissed, grabbing Verena's arm. Those pieces were family heirlooms. Your family, not mine. Verena shot back, wrenching free. Besides, what choice do I have? You got us into this mess with your tax schemes. My tax schemes. Loretta's voice rose. Who is it that couldn't keep her affair private? Who would have flaunted all over town? If you'd been more discreet. Oh, please. This was your idea from the start. Leave the infertile trash, you said. Wells comes from good stock, you said. Verena's bitter mimicry of her mother's voice drew gasps from the growing crowd. The livestream caught at all the accusations, the revelations, the moment Loretta realized they were being recorded and frantically tried to cover her face. Too late. The clip went viral within hours. 2 days later, Lana called Coulter with news. You won't believe this. The morning show wants to interview them. Their producer reached out to Verena directly, offering a chance to tell their side of the story. Coulter's lips curved in a mirthless smile. Let me guess your friend worked for the show. Production assistant, Lana confirmed. The producer has no idea that I suggested Verena and Loretta as guests. They think they're getting a sympathetic platform to rebuild their image. Will they do it? Verena already agreed. She thinks it's her chance at redemption. Loretta's hesitant, but desperate enough that she'll probably go along. The interview aired live the following week. The host, Diane Miller, was known for her seemingly sympathetic approach that often lured guests into damning admissions. She welcomed Verena and Loretta with warm smiles and concerned nods. Coulter watched from his apartment, Kenny and Lana beside him on the couch. Ms. Langdon, Mrs. Reese, thank you for joining us today, Diane began. You've been through quite an ordeal recently. Would you like to share your perspective on what happened? Verena, dressed in one of her few remaining designer outfits, leaned forward earnestly. "Thank you, Diane. It's been a difficult time, filled with misunderstandings and, I admit, some poor decisions on my part." "Misunderstandings?" Diane's tone remained gentle, but her eyes sharpened. "Yes. My relationship with Wells, it developed during a particularly challenging period in my marriage. My husband and I had learned he couldn't have children, and the emotional strain." "Let's talk about that," Diane interrupted smoothly. "You mentioned your husband's infertility. We have some emails here." She gestured, and the screen behind them displayed the messages between Verena and Loretta, mocking Coulter's condition. "Would you call these misunderstandings as well?" Verena paled. Loretta stepped in, all practice grace. "Diane, private correspondence taken out of context." "Of course." Diane nodded. "Context is important. So let's add some context." The screen changed to show the birthday dinner invitation, then the note. "Happy birthday. Infertile trash should just leave." This was a note you both left for your husband on his birthday, along with divorce papers. Is that correct? The interview continued its downward spiral. Each time Verena or Loretta attempted to reshape the narrative, Diane countered with evidence: the videos, the emails, the financial documents. The final blow came when she brought out the waitress from Maison de Cille, who tearfully described serving Coulter alone on his birthday after he'd discovered the cruel note. "He was so dignified," the waitress said. "He sat there and ate every course by himself. Paid the full bill plus a generous tip. I've never seen someone in so much pain try so hard to maintain their composure." In the studio, Loretta's carefully maintained facade crumbled. Clutching her chest, she swayed in her seat. "I need air." As medical personnel rushed forward, Verena stood frozen, face contorted with humiliation and despair. Then she bolted, running off stage, ignoring Diane's calls to wait. The cameras followed it all: Loretta on a stretcher, Verena fleeing through the backstage area, the host's practice concern in Coulter's apartment. Kenny whistled low. "Damn, that was brutal." That, Coulter said quietly, was justice. The legal proceedings moved swiftly. With the mountain of evidence Coulter had accumulated, his lawyer filed suits against both Verena and Loretta for defamation, emotional distress, financial malfeasance, and conspiracy. Loretta, facing simultaneous action from the IRS, had no resources to mount a proper defense. Verena, abandoned by Wells and her mother's connections, could barely afford representation. In the end, the settlement was swift and comprehensive. Coulter was awarded the house, all joint accounts, and Verena's vehicle. Loretta was ordered to pay substantial damages, forcing the liquidation of her remaining assets. Verena, with nothing left to give, was assigned a payment plan that would take decades to fulfill. The day after the settlement was finalized, Coulter received an unexpected email from Naomi Bishop, the manager of Maison de Cille. She requested a meeting at his convenience. They met at a quiet cafe downtown. Naomi was elegant and composed, her dark hair pulled back in a simple knot. She got straight to the point. "I've been following your situation with interest, Mr. Reese. What happened at our restaurant that night? I want you to know it wasn't our doing. Madam Langdon paid one of our staff to arrange that private room and place the envelope. When I discovered what had happened, I fired the employee immediately." Coulter studied her. "Why tell me this now?" "Because I have evidence." She slid a USB drive across the table. "Security footage showing Madam Langdon bribing my employee. Audio of her specifically instructing how the birthday surprise should be arranged. It proves premeditation and intent to cause emotional harm. Why would you help me?" Naomi's eyes held as steadily. "I believe in integrity, Mr. Reese. What they did was unconscionable, and they used my restaurant to do it. That offends me personally and professionally." The new evidence sealed the final legal proceedings. The judge, already sympathetic to Coulter's case, was incensed by the calculated cruelty revealed in Naomi's footage. The damages awarded were increased substantially, and a permanent restraining order was issued against both Loretta and Verena. Outside the courthouse, Coulter's lawyer shook his hand. "Congratulations. This is about as complete a victory as I've ever seen." Coulter nodded, watching Verena being led away by her cut-rate attorney, shoulders slumped in defeat. It's done, then. Completely. They're finished financially, legally, socially. I doubt they'll ever recover from this. That night, alone in his new apartment, Coulter should have felt triumphant. But as he sat with a glass of whiskey, staring out at the Seattle skyline, he felt only hollow. The rage that had fueled him for months had burned out, leaving ash and emptiness. He picked up his phone and dialed Kenny. "It's over," he said when his friend answered. "We won. Congratulations." Kenny paused. "Why don't you sound happier about it?" "I don't know," Coulter admitted. "It doesn't feel like I thought it would." "That's because revenge is a shit substitute for happiness, brother. You prove your point. You got justice. Now I need to build something new." After they hung up, Coulter sat for a long time, considering Kenny's words. Then he picked up his phone again and made another call. "Naomi? It's Coulter Reese. I was wondering if you'd be interested in dinner sometime." 1 year later, Coulter stood outside Maison de Cille, checking his watch. The restaurant looked different somehow, or perhaps he was the one who had changed. He straightened his tie, a small smile playing at his lips. Inside, the maitre d' greeted him with warm recognition. "Mr. Reese, welcome back. Your table is ready." Coulter followed him through the main dining area to the same private room where everything had begun. This time, the table was set for two, candles flickering in silver holders, champagne chilling in an ice bucket. "Perfect," Coulter said, slipping the maitre d' a generous tip. "Thank you." He sat down, placed a folded paper at the center of the table, and waited. 10 minutes later, the door opened, and Naomi entered. She wore a deep blue dress, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. Her smile when she saw him lit up her entire face. "Sorry I'm late," she said, leaning down to kiss him briefly. "Last-minute crisis with a supplier. The burden of ownership," Coulter replied with a smile, standing to hold her chair. 3 months earlier, when Maison de Cille's owner had decided to sell, Coulter and Naomi had partnered to buy it. The restaurant was now, there's a fact that still made him marvel at life's strange turns. Naomi noticed a folded paper as she sat down. "What's this?" "Open it," Coulter said, pouring champagne into 2 flutes. She unfolded the paper, reading aloud. "Never feed snakes. Let them starve." Looking up, she arched an eyebrow. "Cryptic," Coulter smiled. "A reminder of where we've been and where we're going." "Speaking of where they've been," Naomi said, accepting the champagne, "did you hear about Loretta? Working at a gas station outside Tacoma, last I heard." Naomi nodded. "And Verena's handing out samples at that grocery store on Pike Street. Cheese cubes and crackers on toothpicks." She took a sip of champagne. "They don't speak to each other anymore. Apparently, they had a very public falling out at a bus stop last month." Coulter considered this information, waiting for the satisfaction he'd once craved. It didn't come. Instead, he felt a quiet peace, not joy at their downfall, but acceptance that justice had been served. "You're sure you want to be seen here again?" Naomi asked, gesturing around the private dining room that had once been the scene of such betrayal. Coulter reached across the table, taking her hand in his. The warmth of her fingers chased away the last, lingering chill of old pain. "This time," he said, "I own the table." And the note. They clinked glasses, the crystal ringing clear and true in the candlelit room. Outside, Seattle continued its eternal rain, washing everything clean.